This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien begins the show with his grain market outlook, where he highlights the new contract highs for some commodities and export figures. Sandy Johnson and Emma Briggs with K-State Beef continue the show as they discuss cow camp in Hays, Kansas, and how they have developed their program to keep meeting the learning needs and wants from the cattle industry. Wrapping up the show is Chip Redmond, K-State meteorologist, explaining what weather pattern we can be expecting between hot weather and then wet weather. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with the grain market outlook from K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. Daniel, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Shelby.
Daniel, as we're looking at grain futures, what action are we seeing?
Well, we're moving upwards in a number of our primary grain markets. It's been, I wish you could say, well, we expected some type of summer move to the high side, but we've certainly had from high to low, back to high, and in some cases making new contract highs for some of these commodities. When you look at, for instance, the corn market closed yesterday, Thursday, July the 23rd, with a September corn of 463 and a fourth, D's 486 and 3/4, and we were 440, 430, a lot closer to 450 than where we're at right now. So we've seen about a 35 plus cent increase in D's corn futures, and in that complex move to the higher side. It's interesting to see the carrying charges. The September contract from 463 and a quarter to D's to 486 and 3/4, you've got a 7, almost 8 cents per month carry in that contract. So interesting to watch. When you look at the cash markets, we see cash corn with a high price that I could see, again, picking out the highest price in each of these areas. In the Pittsburgh area, cash price of 469, that's heading towards $5 a bushel. Garden City area, traditional lead area in the state, the market demand center, 454 is highest price that I'd seen anyway. Topeka 449, everything at least 424, Saline area, Colby 439, and Hutchinson the same. And new crop bids for corn, forward contract bids, the highest one at 478 in the Garden City area, 463 Pittsburgh, 448 in both Salina and Topeka, 450 Colby area, 423 in Hutchinson. So a markedly different situation than we had seen just not that long ago. I would say when you look at the chart, I guess record of movement, when you start to get this type of movement to the high side, you start to look at technicals to see what in the world they're telling you, the technical measures of the market. And so we have relative strength indices trading yesterday's close. It's a kind of accumulation at 61.6. And 50 is medium, and you've got probably 61 is the average, and we're moving closer to, on the high side, more like 70. So I said the wrong number there. Rate of change, 7.5% increase over time. I think that farmers listening to our discussion here are well aware that markets, they'll move to the high side, they'll bounce around. When people after they make money on a rally up, they'll take profits, go sideways, and then figure out if there's more news. And really, so the question would be on the corn market, and pretty similar for the soybeans we just talked about in a minute, is what will the weather bring right now? We've got Chip Redmond's discussion coming on at the end of your program today is awfully important in terms of talking about heat. And heat more so, I guess, than dryness right now at this point. But I'd watch for that. Corn at a close on Friday at 463 and a quarter isn't near the highs for the September contract yet. Those highs were basically at just under $5. But for soybeans, the historic highs that we'd seen for the August soybean futures contract were closer to 1224, 1230, something like that. We saw in yesterday's close 437 and a half. So that's a new contract high. I guess some would say it's a roller coaster ride. We'd seen back in May, again, a high around, again, about 1225, 1224, dropped down to 11. And now with this combination of purchases of exports and also of weather concerns, back up to again 1237 and a half. The RSI, relative strength indices, is at 70 for August soybean futures. And again, once we start to run up and look at these measures of technical, I guess, indicators of momentum to the higher side or low side, it's kind of like the old acronym for the National Football League. It means not for long. The market runs up to an area and then reconsiders whether it should go higher or not. So again, right now we're coming into we're in late July, heading for August. Prime time really for soybeans. And of course, your heat that we're seeing right now, have been seeing, is coming right during critical times for corn development in July here. So both those issues at hand. Soybean cash price bids have seen the highest one spike high bid in the Topeka area, and really one standing out even for the other elevators in that area at 1247, 1198 Hutchinson, 1188 Pittsburgh, 1168 Salina, lesser in other areas. So, really a big change from where we had been, starting to show some of that. And in watching basis levels, you have some areas of the state where you've seen basis narrow up quite a bit, particularly for the feed grains in the West. We'll be watching the basis levels as we go forward, no doubt. So important times in the grain markets. And I would say that even looking at ethanol plants, one step back to corn, the average Kansas cash price at the ethanol plants for corn, $4.77. And the highest bids are still back in Indiana and Ohio at $4.91, $4.78. Some bids throughout all that getting up to $5, one $5 bid in Kansas. So interesting times for November soybeans. We closed at 1241 yesterday. So interesting to watch. 1235 for August. When we turn to wheat, we were looking at fives, hoping for six, not that long ago for wheat. But as the short harvest came on and these other issues happening internationally, particularly in Europe, and with some other problems, I think, and other parts of the world too, had seen this September hard red winter wheat close at $7.57. Yesterday on Thursday, the 23rd. Next harvest, July 27th, at $7.81. So we're in short order heading towards, if we continue this type of upward trend, heading for $8 futures for hard red winter wheat. So just really a thought-provoking situation to be in. The best cash bids in the state, 735 Salina, 730 at Hutchinson, 725 Topeka, and those are top standout bids in a number of cases. You have a lot of other elevators that aren't necessarily giving terminal bids, but the lead bids are at that area. Even in western Kansas, the top hard red winter wheat cash bid, 695 at both Colby and Garden City. So just so we're knocking on the door $7, even in the areas of the state, $7 a bushel, even in areas of the state that are farther from the processors and a lot of the rail movement. So I guess I'd say that just lots to look at. Some of the underlying movement, corn, that at least catches my own eye. Corn export figures for this last, basically we got to, for the week ending July the 16th, 70 million bushels of export movement. We got about 6 weeks left this market year, and that's even ahead of the pace of about 62, 63 or so million bushels a week that we need to meet the USDA's pace for U.S. corn exports to the world. I think that's 3.3 and a quarter billion bushels. So, it's a gangbusters strong pace, up and down in terms of the pace for grain sorghum exports. I guess the best story there is here with that we're 90% of the way to the USDA's projection of 220 million bushels, and we're about 88, 89% of the way through the marketing year. So we're still bought ahead of pace. We'll see. The sorghum pace is up and down for soybeans, and for wheat, the pace it goes up and down. And this last week was more of moderating week with regard to soybean exports. So we're sitting here at this point. The next time the USDA will come in and actually have the potential for updating their hard numbers will be in the August WASDE report, WASDE and crop production report. That August report will have the first indication by farmers of what they think their yields are. The USDA will actually go out into the field and give their own measures plus what farmers say when we get out into September. So, I guess to kind of wrap this up. So here we're sitting at in the latter part of July. We didn't know whether we'd have any type of weather concerns or other movement in these markets 3 or 4 weeks ago. Well, now we've got this place where we have. It's really a question now of to what degree will these crop concerns in the U.S. play out? Do we have enough accumulated challenges that in terms of crop production that the U.S. corn yield will be less than the projected 183 bushels an acre? Similar questions for soybeans. I think it's projected about 53. Will we get that, given some of the temperatures that we have? And as I've worked with those supply-demand balance sheets, you put everything down that they've listed so far, and coming out of that July report, everything holds together pretty decently unless we start really tracking back those yields. And it doesn't take much on the corn side to get us down to about 1.5 billion bushel carryout, 1.5, 1.6, and get that tight. Given the usage we've got, you've got impetus to have price moves like we're looking at here to the higher side, and that's the case for both corn and soybeans. Sorghum follow along closely with what the corn does on the feed grain side, and wheat already high because of the short hard red wheat crop. So just interesting times, Shelby, to watch these markets.
Daniel, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much.
That was K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing the Western Kansas Cow Camp with K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist Sandy Johnson and K-State Beef Systems Specialist Emma Briggs. Sandy, Emma, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Shelby. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Talking about Cow Camp, this one taking place in Hays, Kansas. And Emma, what is Cow Camp?
So Cow Camp is a hands-on learning experience where we're really here to help you grow in whatever your goals are to help your operation back at home, right? Whether that's a small herd, helping with family operation, or even if you're brand new to the cattle industry and want to just get a crash course on some of the things that you need to learn, right? But we really focus on the hands-on programming that really build the confidence that you need, connections with other people in your area that also are going through a similar stage of life, right? And then also really focusing on building those practical skills as well.
Sandy, how have you seen Cow Camp grow and evolve to meet the needs of participants more and more each time?
Well, probably a couple ways. This will be our third opportunity to offer Cow Camp, and so we've tried to take the suggestions that we've heard, not only on topics, but also we have a tendency to want to, pack a lot into probably greater expectations, the amount of time it takes to cover that. So we're trying to make sure that we target those things a little better. We're going to provide an opportunity in some sessions for a more of a beginner than what we've allowed for before, right? We've tried to put everybody together. And so Emma's going to break down the nutrition so that if TDN is a new term to you, we're going to start there and just try and meet people where they're at a little bit better. And the other thing we're doing is just trying to make sure we allow a little more time for questions that come up and that there's time for those to happen and get those answered. So those are the things we've tried to do to adjust based on what we've learned.
And you made a mention of beef cattle nutrition being one of the topics. However, there are a ton of topics for people to learn from. And what are a few of the others?
So we do have nutrition. Sandy is going to give a great reproduction-based talk. We're also going to talk about implants, have a hands-on demonstration on how to use all the different implants and really get into the discussion of when should you use implants, especially with some of the newer regulations that have come across in this past half decade. We're also going to talk about vaccine handling, when to use vaccines, how to properly store them, creating a potential vaccine timeline, neonatal calf care. We're also having High Plains Credit come in and really talk about some of the things of what do you need to have together when you go to talk to your lender, at a bank, and trying to create a good plan on that part, as well as flying tick control and some prescribed burning talks as well.
Sandy, which one's your favorite topic to get to share with attendees?
Well, I've kind of had to work hard on Emma to allow us to cover some reproduction, but we got a little more reproduction in there this year. And so we're going to actually look at some reproductive tracks, talk about the anatomy and understand some of the physiology, and we'll slip in then, how that relates to some of our management options. So, I can spend days talking about reproduction. So, of course, that's the most important topic to people to take in. Not that I'm biased.
Emma, what's your favorite topic that will be discussed at Cow Camp?
So I do love Sandy talking about repro related topics. I'm really excited to help lead some of that beef cattle nutrition section, along with Dr. Mindy King from the Department of Animal Science. To really go into the ins and outs of beef cattle nutrition. And like Sandy said earlier, we're planning on having kind of two separate sections, like an advanced section and an intro section. So that way we can make sure that we're providing adequate information about cattle nutrition that fits kind of where you're at in your learning experience or in your previous, to match your previous background and the skills you currently have with nutrition.
Don't be afraid of her advanced term. It's not going to be master's level. It's just going to be a different level than the very introductory.
You mentioned this hands-on aspect of Cow Camp, which I think is really cool. And so is that attendees really getting to go practice those things that you're teaching them?
Yes. Not everything, the prescribed fire, we're not going to light anything on fire, but we're going to look at the equipment. I do believe they're going to get an opportunity to try some implants. Emma, is that correct? Everything is looking okay for those calves to be available?
Yep.
And what else do we have?
We're also going to have a hands-on vaccine handling demonstration also. So actually getting to learn how to mix vaccines, how to build your own vaccine cooler, how to, understand those aspects as well. And then on the prescribed burning piece, I think we're going to have a couple burning operations come and bring equipment and talk about burn plans with that aspect as well. Neonatal calf care, we have a couple of frozen calves that we're going to have available so people can practice tubing a calf, learning how that feels and those aspects as well.
You mentioned this being the third cow camp. And so what have you seen attendees from the first two cow camps really be able to take home back to their operations?
Yeah, I guess if I try and reflect on what's in those evaluations, it's we have a fairly diverse group to begin with, from 5 cows to a family with a large purebred operation, but the wife has felt like she wanted to know more to support that. So everybody's going to take a little bit something different. And so whether it's, I think maybe the most common is why perhaps an operation is doing certain things. And then in some cases, it's kind of the best management practices. And we have certainly talked about the situation where we talk about what we think is a good management practice, and we discuss that somebody else in their operation does not see it that way or doesn't do it that way, and a little bit how do we have that discussion? What are some points maybe we can bring up? And Not that counseling is an area I have any experience in, but those are real situations, and we try and help talk through them. And it could be one of the other participants has lived through that and has something to share on it as well. So.
And I think one of the quotes that really stood out to me when I was talking to someone at the last cow camp was, I didn't know how much I didn't know. Right. And so it just kind of helps create an eye opener. And she said that now she knows what she needs to look up, right? The things that she was missing. It gave her a good intro starting point to help build her own knowledge base for her operation at home.
Who do you recommend attend cow camp?
So I think, anyone who is new to the cattle business or feels that they have some skills that they would really like to learn that kind of hit some of the target programs that we're planning on having after this cow camp. Anyone who is looking to gain confidence in some of these hands-on skills, herd management, but really we're looking for people who are just want to be or currently are actively involved and want to better understand management decisions and help have a management role in the operation that they're a part of.
As we look at Cow Camp 2026 happening in Hays, Kansas, September 9th through the 10th, when is that day getting started on the 9th and wrapping on the 10th?
Right. We'll have them come in at noon, and we'll have lunch and do some introductions and get to know each other. And then we hope to wind up by noon the next day. We're hoping that the weather will be perfect and not influence some of the arrangement of our plans. We have ways to deal with that, but that's noon to noon is our goal.
And what are a few important details when we think about registration for cow camp?
It is limited to 35 participants. We limit that number mainly because we can only have so many people in a working facility at a time. And in order to get that good hands-on experience, we have limited the number of people who can attend. And currently the registration is $80 for the entire program. And it includes lunch for both days as well as an evening meal on that first day.
Emma, Sandy, I appreciate both taking the time to join us today.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
That was K-State Beef Systems Specialist Emma Briggs and K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist Sandy Johnson as they discuss Cow Camp, which is coming up on September 9th through the 10th at the K-State Western Kansas Research Extension Center located in Hays, Kansas. Cow Camp is limited to 35 people. If you would like to get registered, I will put a link in today's show notes on agtoday.net, or you could also navigate the page by going to www.wkrec.org. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update from K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, as we look at the weather for this past week, I feel like we first need to make mention of the hot weather we saw in Kansas.
Yeah, it got warm this weekend. For folks in southwest Kansas, it was warmer earlier than folks in eastern Kansas, but a lot of 100-degree readings. Most of the state got at or close to 100. And we look at southwest Kansas, especially where we have moderate severe drought still persisting, basically from Barber County north and east all the way up to Sherman counties. Where the worst drought conditions sit right now, those folks who really got into the oven with heat over the weekend. And for eastern Kansas, the unfortunate part was we did have some scattered showers, were just widespread enough to add a lot of moisture in localized areas and just resulted in really, really steamy conditions where, they weren't as dry as folks in western Kansas, but man, it made that heat really miserable. We measure the heat a lot of times in the temperature, obviously, but about the feels like temperature, and heat index is one way we do it with temperature and humidity. Another way we can do it, though, is look at the animal comfort that we talk about occasionally. And that also factors in both the sun as well as the wind. And we had no wind, and we had a lot of sun, and we had a lot of humidity, and the animal comfort index topped out about 114, 115 for folks in eastern Kansas. And that's really stinking hot, and it feels just insufferable, especially when we just don't get any airflow.
And looking towards the end of this week, though, did some parts of Kansas see some precipitation?
On Tuesday night into Wednesday, we had a cold front push through the state. It brought temperatures down almost 20 degrees, highs in the low 80s, mid 80s. That's below average. Kansas should be anywhere from the low to mid 90s as average high temperatures. So definitely some relief, at least in that heat. And then we finally got another system in here both Thursday into Friday, and precipitation amounts, I know as we record this, are still falling, but good amounts for folks in north central and eastern Kansas, where over 2 inches of rain has fallen in places. And so when we look at average precipitation, anywhere from 1 to 1.5 inches of rain for a lot of folks, kind of average almost across state. Obviously, it tapers off as you get further west, but a good drink of moisture. When we had that impressive heat last weekend, it did suck a lot of that moisture out of the ground. It stressed a lot of vegetation. So this precipitation is really well timed in hopefully reducing the overall stress, and we'll take that anytime we can get it in the middle of summer in Kansas for sure.
Starting the week with hot weather, having some precipitation, can we be expecting to return to hot weather?
Yeah, so we had the precipitation that really was a result of moisture that went over the ridge of high pressure across the Rocky Mountains and originated in the East Pacific with a hurricane. And so it went up north and then down and around to Kansas. And that the reason it was able to take that trajectory is that high pressure weakened. Well, the high pressure is going to rebuild this weekend and expand and basically cut off that moisture source again, and it's going to heat things up again. I think 100 degrees is definitely likely for a lot of folks. Obviously, a little bit more moisture in the air and in the ground now, but it's going to feel hot again with really steamy conditions again. And that's probably going to take us through middle of next week until maybe we see the next sign of maybe the next push of moisture come around and kind of weaken that ridge a little bit and allow some of it to intrude southward into Kansas. Hopefully by the middle of late next week, we can see another chance of precipitation. And when we look into August, Kansas is expected to be above average temperature-wise and above average precipitation-wise for the most part. So that plays a role in keeping the cycle of heat, and then when you get some moisture, then more heat, and it's being driven significantly by the hurricane activity, especially in the East Pacific right now, in the lack of hurricane activity in the Atlantic. So definitely a repetitive pattern, a warm pattern, but hopefully we can keep this pattern going frequently enough and spread that precipitation out to get everyone timely enough moisture.
Chip, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.